Look, I'm not saying humans are completely insane. I'm just saying that when the Galactic Council sent Dr. Vera Chen to study the wildlife on Carcanos Prime, they probably should have checked her psychological evaluation a bit more carefully. Or at all. Did they do that? Signs point to no. The thing about Carcanos Prime, if you're not familiar, according to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Is that it's what we in the scientific community call aggressively hostile to all forms of intelligent life. The locals call it that hellhole where everything wants to eat your face. Both are accurate. The planet has a delightful ecosystem where every single creature, from the moss upward, has evolved specifically to ruin your day. The moss, by the way, secretes an acid that can dissolve boot leather in under 3 minutes. Charming place for a vacation, really. Dr. Chen, being human and therefore possessing the survival instincts of a lemming with a death wish, volunteered for a solo research mission. 6 months, they said. Study the native fauna, they said. Try not to die, they strongly suggested. The Galactic Council approved it because, well, humans have a tendency to survive things that would make a Krellian battle tank weep for its mother. And also because insurance premiums on human researchers are surprisingly affordable. Something about the actuarial tables just working out when your species treats near-death experience as a fun Tuesday. Vera landed her research pod in what the orbital surveys had optimistically labeled a low-threat zone, which on Carcanos Prime meant that only 60% of the local wildlife was actively carnivorous. The other 40% was just opportunistically carnivorous. She set up her equipment, activated her defense perimeter, and proceeded to do what humans do best: completely ignore every single safety protocol in favor of satisfying their curiosity. 3 weeks in, she encountered the Cricks. Now, the Cricks are apex predators in the truest sense. Imagine if you took a tiger, made it the size of a grizzly bear, gave it 6 legs, added retractable claws that could punch through starship hull plating, and then gave it a really bad attitude. Then make it smarter, way smarter. The Cricks hunt in family units, communicate through a complex series of growls and subsonic frequencies, and have been known to hold grudges for years. Delightful creatures, absolute darlings of natural selection. Vera, naturally, decided she wanted to study them up close. Her first encounter with an adult Cricks went about as well as you'd expect. She was collecting soil samples, because apparently that's what you do on a death world when you should be cowering in your fortified research pod. And she looked up to find herself face to face with 300 kilograms of muscle, teeth, and bad intentions. The Cricks, an adult male with scarring that suggested he'd won several disagreements with other large objects, tilted his massive head and regarded her with the kind of interest a gourmet chef might show a particularly well-marbled steak. Vera, in a display of what can only be described as spectacularly human judgment, slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her lunch. A sandwich. She was facing down a creature that could disembowel her with a lazy swipe, and her survival strategy was to offer it processed meat and cheese on bread. The Cricks sniffed the sandwich, made a sound like a cement mixer choking on gravel, which the translation software later informed her meant approximately, "What is this pathetic garbage?" And then, wonder of wonders, took the sandwich. Gently. With teeth that could shear through bone like it was tissue paper, the Cricks delicately extracted the sandwich from her hand and ate it in 2 bites. Then it left. Vera's incident report that evening was a masterpiece of scientific understatement. Successful non-hostile contact with Crick's specimen. Further observation warranted. Her superiors back at the Galactic Council probably read that while drinking their morning stimulants and subsequently choked on them. The response was swift and predictable. Return to base immediately. This is not a request. Vera's response was even swifter. Communication system experiencing technical difficulties. Will report again when possible. She then proceeded to shut off her long-range communications and continue her research. Because of course she did. Over the next few weeks, Vera began observing a family group of Cricks from what she called a respectful distance, and what anyone with functioning self-preservation instincts would call uncomfortably close proximity to things that could kill you. The family consisted of the male she'd first encountered, whom she named Marcus, an adult female she called Cassandra, and their 3 cubs. The cubs were about the size of wolves, which is to say still perfectly capable of ripping a person apart, but with that distinctive, ungainly quality that young predators have before they fully grow into their murder mittens. Vera documented everything. Hunting patterns, social structures, communication methods. She filled notebooks with observations and her personal logs with commentary that ranged from scientific analysis to what can only be described as interspecies gossip. Cassandra brought down a thornback today with a technique I haven't seen before. Marcus seems annoyed that she's showing off. The cubs are learning, but the smallest one, I'm calling her Nova, keeps getting distracted by her own tail. It's adorable and also probably a survival liability. It was Nova who changed everything. 2 months into her observation period, Vera was tracking the family group through the dense Carcanos forest when she heard it. A sound that transcended species and planetary origin. The cry of a young creature in distress. She followed the sound and found Nova alone, tangled in a mass of razor wire vines, one of the planet's many delightful flora that had evolved specifically to be the worst. The cub was panicking, and every movement was making it worse, the vines cutting deeper into her tough hide. The smart thing to do would have been to leave. The adult Cricks were surely nearby, and they would not appreciate a strange creature approaching their offspring, sandwich diplomacy notwithstanding. Vera, in a shocking display of character consistency, did not do the smart thing. She approached slowly, making soft sounds, the kind of calm nonsense noises humans make to frightened animals, regardless of whether they understand them. Hey there, little one. It's okay. I know this is terrible and you're scared, and these vines are the absolute worst. I'm going to help you, all right? Please don't eat my face. Nova went very still, watching Vera with eyes that reflected far too much intelligence. Vera pulled out her field knife, a wicked little thing designed to cut through Carcanos vegetation, and began carefully sawing through the vines. It was delicate work. One wrong move, and she'd cut the cub. Or the cub would decide she was a threat and do what Crick's cubs do to threats, which is practice being their adult murder machine selves. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of careful cutting while sweat poured down Vera's face and her hands shook with adrenaline. 20 minutes during which she kept up a running commentary. You know, when I signed up for xenobiology, I thought I'd be studying things in nice, safe, controlled environments. Maybe looking at samples under a microscope. Instead, I'm on a death world performing field surgery on an apex predator's baby. My career counselor did not adequately prepare me for this scenario. When the last vine fell away, Nova remained perfectly still. Blood seeped from a dozen cuts across her body. Not life-threatening, but definitely painful. Vera carefully backed away, giving the cub space. Nova stood, shook herself, and then did something that would have made every xenobiologist in the galaxy squeal with scientific excitement. She approached Vera, pressed her massive head against Vera's leg, and made a sound that was somehow both a purr and a rumble. "You're welcome," Vera whispered carefully placing one hand on the cub's head. The fur was coarse and warm. "Now please go find your parents before they find me and decide I was the one who hurt you." Nova made another sound, then bounded off into the forest. Vera stood there, shaking, and began the trek back to her pod. She made it about 50 meters before Marcus and Cassandra stepped out of the undergrowth and blocked her path. This is it, Vera thought. This is how I die. Eaten on an alien world because I couldn't resist helping a baby predator. At least it's on brand. The two adult cricks approached slowly. Marcus in front, Cassandra flanking. Classic hunting formation. Vera did the only thing she could think of. She sat down, made herself as small as possible, and looked away. Submission posture, universal across 100 species. I'm not a threat. Please don't kill me. I'm just a curious idiot who wanted to help. Marcus reached her first. She felt his breath, hot and smelling of meat, against her neck. One bite. That's all it would take. Instead, he made that cement mixer sound again. The translator helpfully provided, "Human thing helped small one." Cassandra circled around, sniffed Vera thoroughly, and made a different sound. "Human thing carries hurt marks." It took Vera a moment to understand. They were referring to her scars. She had plenty. Burn scars on her arms from a lab accident during her graduate studies. A long surgical scar on her leg from a childhood injury. Various other marks collected over a lifetime of being human and therefore accident-prone. Slowly, carefully, Vera rolled up her sleeve, showing the burn scars. "Yeah," she said softly. "I've been hurt before. Survived, though. We're good at that." Marcus made a sound that had no translation. Then he turned and walked away. Cassandra followed. Just before she disappeared into the undergrowth, the female cricks looked back at Vera and made one more sound. "Human thing is strange pack friend." Vera sat there for a long moment, processing the fact that she was apparently now friends with a family of apex predators. "I need to report this," she muttered. "This is significant. This is groundbreaking. This is going to make my career." Then she remembered she'd turned off her communications. Right. Also, I'm probably fired. The next few weeks were, in a word, weird. The Cricks family didn't avoid her anymore. In fact, they seemed to seek her out. She'd be setting up her monitoring equipment, and Marcus would appear, watching her work with what she could only interpret as curiosity. She'd be eating lunch, and Cassandra would settle down nearby, grooming herself, completely at ease. The cubs, especially Nova, treated her like a strange but acceptable member of the group. It was during this time that Vera made another series of discoveries that would eventually revolutionize xenobiology. She observed the Cricks teaching their cubs to hunt, to fight, to survive. But she also observed them caring for injured family members, mourning when one of the cubs died from infected wounds after a territorial dispute with another family, and celebrating successful hunts with elaborate social displays. They weren't just intelligent. They had culture, society. They mourned their dead and cared for their wounded. The galaxy had classified them as dangerous wildlife, when they were clearly people. Different people, scary people. People with 6 legs and retractable murder claws. But people nonetheless. Vera documented all of it, and she began to teach them too. Basic first aid, using her own medical supplies. She showed Cassandra how to clean wounds to prevent infection. She demonstrated simple tools that could help dig out parasites that plagued the cricks. In return, they taught her things: how to move silently through the forest, which plants were safe and which would kill you if you even thought about touching them, how to read the warning signs of the planet's frequent storms. It was peaceful in a weird way. Vera living in her pod, the Crick's family making their den nearby. Strange pack friends, as Cassandra had said. Then came the day that changed everything again. Vera was 4 months into her mission when she encountered the Scracks. The Scracks were another predator species on Carcanos Prime, smaller than the Cricks but meaner, and they hunted in packs of 20 or more. Vera had been careful to avoid their territory. But territories shift, and she found herself in the wrong place at the wrong time. 3 Scracks cornered her in a narrow canyon. They moved like raptors, quick and coordinated. Vera had her stunner, good for maybe 2 shots before it needed to recharge. 3 targets, and if she missed, she was lunch. She fired. 1 Scrax dropped, twitching. The other 2 charged. Vera did what humans do when faced with impossible odds and no good options. She got angry. She grabbed a rock and threw it at the nearest Scrax, catching it in the eye. It shrieked and stumbled. The 3rd one leaped at her, and she moved, not fast enough, and felt claws rake across her shoulder and down her ribs, fire and pain. She fell, rolled, came up with her field knife in hand. The Scrax circled, intelligent enough to recognize a cornered predator when it saw one. Vera was breathing hard, blood soaking through her shirt. Not good. Not good at all. "Come on, then," she snarled. "Let's see what you've got." The Scrax lunged, and then Marcus hit it like a freight train. The adult Cricks came out of nowhere, a blur of muscle and fury. He had the Scrax by the throat before it could even scream. Cassandra appeared a second later, dispatching the stunned Scrax with brutal efficiency. The injured one fled, wisely deciding that discretion was the better part of not being dead. Marcus dropped the body and immediately turned to Vera. She was sitting now, hand pressed to her side, blood leaking between her fingers. "Hey," she said, voice tight with pain. "Thanks for that. Really impeccable timing." Marcus made a sound that needed no translation. Worry. He nosed at her hand, sniffing the blood. "It's not that bad," Vera lied. "It was absolutely that bad. Deep cuts, probably going to need stitches, definitely going to need antibiotics." She needed to get back to her pod. She tried to stand, and her legs decided that was a terrible idea. The world tilted unpleasantly. Cassandra made a sound, and suddenly Nova was there, and the other cubs, and they were surrounding her, warm bodies providing support. Marcus positioned himself in front, Cassandra behind. Moving as a unit, they began to guide her back toward her pod. It took an hour of stumbling through the forest, while the Crick's family essentially carried her, protected her, got her home. When they reached her pod, Marcus wouldn't leave. He planted himself at the entrance and refused to budge. "I need to go inside," Vera said. "I need medical supplies. I need to fix this." Marcus made the cement mixer sound. "Strange pack friend is hurt. Pack stays. You can't come inside. You're too big. The door won't fit you." The Cricks thought about this for a moment, then laid down directly in front of the entrance. Cassandra and the cubs settled around him. They weren't leaving. Vera wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. She stumbled inside, sealed the door, and collapsed against her medical station. Her hands were shaking as she stripped off her shirt and assessed the damage. 3 deep gashes from shoulder to ribs. Definitely needed stitches. She broke out her field surgical kit and got to work. Here's a fun fact about humans that the galaxy finds both impressive and disturbing. We're really good at patching ourselves up. Millennia of being persistence hunters with no natural weapons or armor meant we got very good at dealing with injuries, because we got injured a lot. Vera threaded the suture needle with steady hands, sprayed local anesthetic, and began stitching her own skin back together. It hurt. Oh, it hurt. But pain is just information, and Vera had work to do. She was halfway through the second gash when she heard it. A sound outside. She looked at her external monitors and saw Nova pressed against the transparent section of the pod wall, watching. The cub's eyes were fixed on what Vera was doing, tracking every movement of the needle. Vera kept working, narrating as she went. See, the trick is to keep the stitches even. Too tight and you'll cause scarring. Too loose and it won't hold. You want to bring the edges of the wound together. Let the body do the rest. She was talking to herself, really. Or maybe to Nova. Or maybe to the universe at large, because keeping a running commentary helped her stay focused and not think about the fact that she was sewing her own flesh together. Nova watched the entire process. Watched Vera stitch all 3 gashes, apply antibiotics, wrap bandages. Watched as Vera cleaned the blood off her hands and arms, exposing all her old scars. The burns, the surgical scars, a dozen smaller marks from a lifetime of minor disasters. When Vera finally finished and stumbled to her sleeping area, she pulled up the external monitors one more time. The Crick's family was still there, surrounding her pod, guarding her. Nova was closest, still pressed against the transparent section, her eyes tracking Vera. Vera pulled off her boots, lay down on her bunk, and let exhaustion take her. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was that she really, really needed to file a report. This was unprecedented. This was first contact, real first contact. Not with another spacefaring species, but with another intelligent species. The implications were staggering. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow I'll deal with the consequences. She woke 8 hours later to the sound of Marcus making alarm calls. Vera lurched upright, immediately regretting it as her stitches pulled. She checked the monitors and her blood ran cold. There was a ship landing. Not her supply shuttle, which wasn't due for another month. This was a Galactic Council enforcement vessel. They'd come for her. Vera pulled on a shirt, wincing at the pain, and opened her pod door. The Crick's family was in full defensive formation, and Marcus looked ready to fight. The Council ship had landed about 50 meters away, far enough to be cautious, close enough to make a point. A figure emerged. Ambassador Threll, a Krellian diplomat who'd tried to stop Vera's assignment in the first place. He was flanked by 2 security officers in full combat gear. Dr. Chen. Threll's voice carried across the distance, amplified by his suit speakers. You are in violation of multiple council regulations. You will return with us immediately for disciplinary proceedings. Vera walked forward, putting herself between the Cricks and the council personnel. With respect, Ambassador, I'm in the middle of groundbreaking research. I need more time. You shut off your communications. You ignored direct orders to return. You've been living in proximity to dangerous wildlife against all protocols. Threll's carapace flushed an angry purple. You're lucky we're here to retrieve you before you get yourself killed. Dangerous wildlife? Vera laughed, and it hurt her stitches, but she didn't care. Ambassador, these aren't wildlife. They're people. Intelligent, social, capable of complex reasoning and cultural transmission. They've been classified wrong. Nonsense. The Cricks are Category 5 predators. They're territorial and aggressive. They're also sapient, Vera gestured back at the family. They have language, social structures. They mourn their dead. They protected me from actual threats. They stayed outside my pod all night after I was injured, keeping watch. Dr. Chen, you're clearly suffering from isolation-induced delusions. Please come quietly. That's when Nova did something that would be recorded in every xenobiology textbook for the next century. The cub walked past Vera, straight toward the council personnel. The security officers raised their weapons immediately. Vera's heart stopped. "Don't," she said. "Please don't." Nova ignored the weapons. She walked right up to Ambassador Threll and sat down. Then she raised one massive paw and extended her claws. The retractable blades gleamed in the sunlight, each one capable of inflicting terrible damage. Threll stumbled backward. The security officers took aim. Nova very deliberately pressed one claw against her own leg and made a shallow cut. Blood welled up, dark against her fur. She held her leg out toward the ambassador and made a sound. The translator picked it up. Hurt, fix. Silence. Complete, total silence. Nova looked back at Vera, then at Threll again. Strange pack friend fixes hurt. Shows how. Nova shows you. Nova is smart one. Ambassador Wellmstur. Threll's carapace went from purple to pale blue. The Krellian color of shock. Vera very slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out her field medical kit. She approached Nova carefully, knelt down, and cleaned the small cut. Nova watched her, then looked at Threll. "See?" Vera said quietly. "She's teaching you, showing you that she understands cause and effect, medical treatment, communication. She deliberately injured herself in a controlled way to prove she understands what I was doing to myself. That's not just tool use. That's not just intelligence. That's theory of mind. That's metacognition." She applied antiseptic to Nova's cut, and the cub flinched but held still. She knew you wouldn't believe words alone, so she provided evidence. "Ambassador, the Cricks aren't wildlife. They're people. And we've been classifying them as dangerous animals because we never bothered to really look." Vera finished bandaging the small wound, and Nova stood, walked back to her family, and settled down next to Marcus. The big male made a rumbling sound and groomed his daughter's ears. Ambassador Threll stood there for a long moment. Then he did something Vera never expected. He laughed. The Krellian laugh sounds like rocks tumbling down a mountain, but it was definitely a laugh. "Dr. Chen, you're absolutely insane. You're also probably right. And you've just created a diplomatic nightmare of unprecedented proportions." He turned to his security officers. "Lower your weapons. We're going to need to call in the xenosociologist team. And legal. Definitely legal. This is going to be complicated." "I'm not in trouble?" Vera asked, surprised. "Oh, you're in enormous trouble. You violated dozens of protocols. You'll probably be facing sanctions, maybe temporary license suspension, certainly mandatory psychological evaluation." Threll's carapace shifted to an amused green. "You'll also probably win every scientific award in the galaxy once we confirm your findings. The species classification system will need to be completely overhauled. Do you have any idea how many worlds we've surveyed and dismissed because the locals seemed too aggressive or weren't technological?" Vera thought about that. Thought about how many species might be out there, intelligent, but not in ways the galaxy recognized. Not building ships or computers, but building societies and cultures and families. "Yeah," she said. "I think I'm starting to." Ambassador Threll approached slowly, carefully. Marcus tensed but didn't move. The ambassador stopped at a respectful distance and addressed the Creeks directly. I apologize. We didn't know. We should have looked more carefully. His translator rendered it into the subsonic frequencies the Cricks used. Marcus regarded him for a long moment, then made the cement mixer sound. Galaxy things are slow to understand, but Galaxy thing helps strange pack friend. This is acceptable. And just like that, everything changed. The next 6 months were chaos. Teams of scientists descended on Carcanos Prime. Linguists, anthropologists, sociologists. The Cricks, it turned out, had multiple family groups with distinct dialects and cultural practices. They had oral histories going back generations. They had art, expressed through the arrangement of bones and stones in complex patterns. They had philosophy, debating questions about territory rights and family obligations. They weren't alone either. 2 other species on Carcanos Prime showed signs of sapience. The galaxy had written off an entire world as hostile wilderness when it was actually home to multiple intelligent civilizations. Vera became famous, which she hated. She won awards, which she accepted graciously, but clearly found tedious. What she wanted was to get back to work. The Galactic Council eventually established formal diplomatic relations with the Cricks. Marcus became, essentially, the representative for his family group. Other family leaders were contacted. Talks began about integration into the galactic community on the Cricks' terms. And Nova? Nova decided she wanted to learn more about other species. She wanted to be what she called a bridge walker, moving between her world and the galaxy beyond. She became the first Cricks to leave their homeworld, appointed as a cultural liaison. Vera went with her, of course. Strange pack friends stick together. On the day they left Carcanos Prime, heading for the Council headquarters station, Vera stood with Nova on the observation deck of the transport ship. The cub, now nearly adult-sized, pressed against her side. Vera absently scratched behind her ears, in the spot that Nova liked. "You know what the funny thing is?" Vera said. "I was trying to study you, document your behavior like you were specimens. But you were studying me right back. When you watched me stitch my wounds, you weren't just watching. You were learning, understanding. You saw my scars and recognized that I was a survivor, just like you." Nova made a sound that the translator rendered as agreement. But Vera had learned enough of the Cricks language to know it meant something closer to, obviously, stupid smart friend. You show hurt marks proudly. In Crick's way, hurt marks that heal mean strength in living. "Yeah," Vera laughed. "I guess they do." She looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities stretching before them. How many other species were out there, waiting to be understood rather than classified? How many potential friends was the galaxy missing because they were too quick to judge, too slow to really see? Humans, with all their scars and reckless curiosity, might just be the bridge walkers the galaxy needed. Crazy enough to ignore safety protocols, empathetic enough to recognize people in unexpected forms, and stubborn enough to make everyone else see it too. "Come on," Vera said, heading toward the door. "We've got meetings to attend, protocols to establish, a whole galaxy to introduce you to." Nova followed, claws clicking on the metal deck. "Will there be food at meetings? Good food?" "Probably